Hello, everybody. We've got a nice group with us today. I'm BL Allison, for those of you who don't know me, and Duane will be, well, he's here. He'll be with us in just a moment. And Rose is here also, part of the staff. As attendees, we have Anne Veronica, Anna, Bonnier, Bree, Carly, Sherry, Deborah, Diana, Helen, James, Karen, Lenny, Lisa, Lona, Margaret, Maria, Mary, Melinda, Michael, Nancy, Robert, Rosewitha, and Roz. Oh, and yeah, okay. And we're getting more attendees all the time, so if I missed your name, I'm sorry. We've got a really good talk coming from Duane, but first I would like to tell you a little bit about the Moira Federation. Duane does these webinars as part of the faculty of the Moira Federation. It's an online school that we have. The school year starts each year at the 21st of December, the December solstice. And we have several different programs available for beginners to esotericism and an advanced program as well. So if you're interested in applying, you can learn more about our school at our moirafederation.com. Okay, so that said, Duane, would you like to start your presentation?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you so much, BL. Without BL and Rose's assistance, I would be hard pressed to pull this off on my own. It's really amazing how many small technicalities and adjustments really go in to be able to make this work. But I am reminded of what Voltaire once said: effort is the result of imperfect mastery. So we're definitely working on it, and each time we improve our technical skills. I'd also like to thank all of you for coming, taking time from your busy schedules, and for your participation. And also to thank the Moya School for allowing us to use their forum and continue with this work. Now, this session is going to be a little different. I'd like to open by making an inquiry to the group of how, A, they would like to see any improvements on these presentations that are being held roughly every month. And then after that, B, how the Facebook page that we've created to sort of keep a little continuity between these monthly presentations active. It adds a lot more, in my opinion, I'll call it warmth and personableness that sometimes we may not have had through our regular Moya presentations. So I'm going to, again, put that inquiry out and ask the group what they would do to improve it or what they would do to add to it. And it might take a minute to give it a little thought. Hello, am I still connected?
Yes, you are, and I don't see any hands yet or any further comments. So,
Okay. Rose, are you still there?
I got a hand.
Okay. Stacy, I see. Michael, excellent. Your question, Michael, or
Okay.
any comments you'd like to share?
Um, I'm thinking that the way you're doing the graphics is marvelous. Perhaps there could be more participation from the audience if
Yes,
some of us read things.
absolutely.
You've been to the Secret Doctrine webinars, and there's very good interaction through the use of others within the audience in reading, and that comes across very well. I do not participate in Facebook, so I can't address that.
Okay. And I think you bring out a very good point. And this is one of the reasons why we're actually changing the forum somewhat during this session to be more interactive and to get more feedback from the participants. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
And then James has his hand up.
Okay. Go ahead, James, you're on.
I trying. Oops. I'm trying to unmute him, but I don't think it's working. James, can you talk? I'm not able to unmute him.
Okay, if there's any other hands that are raised or anybody else would like to share anything, we'll put James on as soon as he
Uh,
connects.
Lisa says conscious focus assignments on the Facebook page related to the last presentation in between sessions.
Yes, assignments, that's excellent. That would be, I do understand that on this Facebook site that I have just put a lot of material on there in a short amount of time, and that people who go there must understand that just take what works for you or what interests you. We've been through so many different topics and so many different posts, but that's good. Maybe some little outlines of things to do. Excellent.
Duane, you can try to unmute James by clicking on participants, like you
Okay.
had earlier done,
Okay, I got participants. Yep.
and then click on like view all attendees.
Attendees, I see that. Okay.
And if you see James, try to click on the red microphone and make it
Okay,
go green.
I see that. Okay, let's try it one more time. Unmute. Okay, it's not unmuting. Oh, wait, it just unmuted. It took a second. Okay, James, you're on.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Now I got to remember what I wanted to say.
That's all right.
First thing was occasionally, like last month, with the 3 points of the triangle with the green magnetic energy.
Yes.
That doesn't come out well. I just wondered if, when you get them off YouTube, could you put a link so we could download them ourselves to get a first-hand view of it?
Yes, this is a good point. And we're getting our graphics and animations better each time we make a presentation, but we do have a long ways to go. And some of these are not from YouTube. I get them from all kinds of different places. And sort of the quality that you see is sort of what I get. Now, granted, there can be improvements because of our equipment and the fact that we're upgrading it all the time. We don't actually use the Moya University we don't use their webinar, we use Zoom, which is a little higher quality, but Rose has done some research and found that there are actually better formats that we can use in the future. So thank you for that.
The other thing to that,
Also-
James, the other thing to that, James, is that some of the videos we have to edit. So, and we add some, maybe the background music or take out ads or whatever. And so again, like Duane was saying, it's not as simple. I mean, sometimes you can just provide a link, but other times it would be more, you know, we'd have to post a video somewhere and then add a link to it. And sometimes that can be done, and sometimes it's a little more difficult if it's a very large file.
Okay, I have downloaded a lot of your ones that didn't come through clearly and
Okay.
edited them myself, and they come out good. that-
Well, then you're the man we need.
The
And-
other thing I was going to say while we're on that subject, you know, last month with the the star,
yes,
the animated star with the
yes,
flashing forth from the.
yes, the start.
I've done one myself. It's not perfect, but you know, it's a whole lot better and in the right colours and everything. I could send a very short video through to you to see if you liked it or what you wanted changed.
Well, please stay in touch with us because you're doing something we're not, and we want to know what that is. So thank you so much for your comments and the fact that you've actually worked on this on your own. One of the long-term goals here, James, and any of the participants in the Moya University may find this of interest, is to be able to get this somewhat perfected so that other contributors who might want to expand their venue or their forum with animations will have it, that we'll make it available. And if the university wants to make it available, fine. But if they don't, we will make it available through, of course, the university. And we're breaking new ground, and it has been very, very slow and very tedious, but we persist, and it is getting better. So thank you. Any
Thank you.
additional comments?
Yes, we have several, and then we have another hand. But let me just read them. Diana says, stimulate the telepathy with participants via symbols.
Okay.
That's her
Yes.
recommendation.
Yes. Maybe a whole group of people meditating on the same symbol. Excellent.
And Mary says, how is humanity going to prepare in concert for the approaching 2025? And I agree that assignments to the participants will involve more participants.
Well, yes, that's, who was it that said that a well-formulated question is already halfway towards a good answer? And I think that the work of the modern day disciple is multifaceted. It's to do the vertical, to use these hierarchical and soul symbols, and to create a bridge and energize that bridge so energy can pour down into these different groups esoterically, and then these esoteric groups in turn step it down to a more horizontal level, and then it can be dissipated and everybody receives a benefit from this work. Some people may work a little more in the vertical, some other people or other groups may work a little more on the horizontal. They're all performing an important function, and it's only working in concert and together that we can bring down these energies as we move towards 2025. It is of my opinion that when 2025 arises, it's not going to be like, oh, okay, now we have like 10 new books that we have to familiarize ourselves with and read. That would be important if that were to take place, but that's really sort of the third aspect of deity, and it's really the light-bearing capacity, and a lot of disciples can tune in to the inner psychic sensitivity telepathically on a mental level of what's coming. Cycles really stop and then a new one starts, and there's like a gate that comes down. No, they overlap according to DK, and they often blend as one is ending and another beginning. And this is why, amongst other things, I'm affiliated with the University of the Seven Rays because, and the Moya University, because I believe that there are members of the group that are doing that. They are forerunners. They are, you might say, the prophets who are embodying that which humanity is still quite a ways from.
And then Diana, she's got her hand up, so let's see if we can. I'm having trouble unmuting her again.
Okay. This is Diane.
Yeah, Diana. She
Okay.
should be there at the top.
Yeah, I can see her. I can unmute her right now. Unmute. Okay. Usually takes a few seconds. Actually, for some reason, it takes 2 clicks. Well, let's try the third time. I'm not sure why, but she's not unmuting.
It might be that she, after you unmute her, she has to additionally unmute herself.
Okay. Well, Diane, you're going to have to further unmute yourself.
Diana, can you do that?
Yes, can you hear me?
I sure can.
I'm sorry, I didn't find the microphone. No, the question was already answered. And I think that we, as a group, need to stimulate the telepathic communication, and the symbol
Yes.
is the way to do it. I am willing to wait what you are going to suggest us to do between each webinar to work on that.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I've thrown out so many different occult and esoteric crumbs, so that participants can say, I feel more, I'm gravitating more towards this or more towards that. And then we take a consensus and then we draft up something new that we can add to the Facebook group. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Diana.
Thank you.
Thank you for your post.
Thank you.
Okay. Any additional comments or suggestions?
No, I think that's it. I think we got them all right now.
Okay, great. On your screen, I have sort of a little outline that I was going to run through. We've covered quite a bit of this already, but let's bring this over here. Okay. So once again, the original idea was to create a bridge between our different sessions in this work with the intuition and developing the higher mind. And I have to say that not only has the different presentations taken on a life of its own and has built powerfully through these 9 months or presentations, there seems to be more uniformity and telepathic contact, but on the Facebook group, it's sort of a little bit more potent because it can be like a day-to-day thing. And a group is formed in many different ways. Go ahead.
Duane, can I interrupt you?
Yes.
For some reason, your sound is varying in volume.
Okay. How is
It's real
that?
nice and loud, and then it gets soft. And I just don't know if you're moving the microphone further away or not.
I think I am. Is that better?
Yeah, that's perfect right there.
Okay. A group can be formed by an individual person or several people or by a whole throng of people. But as it matures and evolves, it begins to take on a life of its own. And it begins to assert its intention. And if someone is a good guide or coordinator, they can help facilitate that by just what we're doing here. And I've been given that responsibility, and now I really want to open it up to have a wider participation. I've been very heartened by how much mentoring there's actually going on in this Facebook group. How some of the senior members of the group, senior in the sense that they're familiar with the occult and esoteric path and material, how they've taken time to answer questions and guide a number of the other participants to get a better grasp and idea of what we're trying to do and the opportunities that will avail themselves to us. And perhaps most important is the idea that all of this mental activity, which has been a spearhead to get this moving, is still very potent and should remain powerful. But in many respects, it's actually taking a back seat to a sense of joy and this opening of what I would call, for lack of better words, the group heart. There's a lot of passion around these teachings, and the mind and the heart can be perfectly blended for this work to take place. I've given many quotes from the Tibetan and HPB about the dangers of overdeveloping the lower mind. But having said that, the mind is the great builder, it's the great mediator. And when people enunciate the great Eastern quote, the mind is the slayer of the real, I always come back with the idea that it's not the mind that slays the real, it's the undisciplined mind, it's the uncoordinated and the undirected mind. Because the mind is one of the single most important tools that we have in this fifth root race. And yes, we need to know how to go from the lower subplanes of the mind into the higher subplanes of the mind. And we'll talk about that more and more as we go through these different sessions, because that is absolutely critical. How the paradox of how you use the mind to go beyond the mind, and how you need the mind as an interpreting agent and a grounding agent, particularly in your service work. So, are there any additional comments or questions that have come up since a few statements I've brought out? The telepathy is very potent in discipleship training, and it can come through dreams, Do you have someone, BL, that would like to share something?
Yes, we do. We have a hand up, and Michael says it's also the revealer of the real.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
And then Heidi has her hand up, so.
Okay, Heidi? Does Heidi need it to be unmuted?
I just tried it and it still says unmute, but Heidi, can you click your microphone and see if that helps? She's still muted.
Okay, I think I need to unmute her.
Here we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I was just going to add that the Sufis say when the mind and let's see if I can say this statement, but basically the mind becomes hammered into the heart, and the two actually become one. They're no longer operating separately, and
Yes.
Let's see so the heart is the surface of the mind, and the mind is the depth of the heart. So when they become one, then basically one is operating through wholeness rather than separation, which is pretty much what we see now.
Yes.
For most people.
Excellent. Well, we have to keep in mind that there are 7 subplanes to the mental plane, and the 3 lower subplanes are involutionary and their gaze is downward. The 4th subplane is sort of transitional, and the 3 higher subplanes of the mental plane are all great evolutionary beings that, once connected with, like Jacob's ladder, lead us out of the desert, so to speak, and into the promised land. So DK also points out that when you're dealing with the higher subplanes of any plane or ray, that they have more intimacy, that they're closer in approximation. In other words, you can think in the heart if you're operating from the higher subplanes. If the mental is right up there and you're tapping into the Buddhic plane of pure reason. And Michael Robbins expresses it eloquently when he talks about the intuitive mind. So excellent. Thank you for that comment.
Duane, can you relate the phrase of the heart in the head?
Would you ask that one more time?
Well, you common hear the phrase of the heart in the head.
Oh, the heart in the head.
Can you
Well,
elaborate on that?
I unfortunately don't have one of my nifty little charts that is really worthy of a good question like that. But I would simply point out that the higher head center, the crown, the egoic lotus is seated in that. You have the heart center within the torso, and then you have the heart center within the egoic lotus in the 1,000-petal lotus. And at the third initiation, that higher egoic lotus begins to open and reveal not only the love petals, but the will petals. And this is until the 5th initiation. Well, the destruction of the causal body begins at the 3rd and culminates more or less at the 5th. And then that intermediary is no longer needed, the egoic lotus, the divine jiva or soul body. Any additional comments or questions?
Yes, Roz says it's the mind who says the mind is the slayer of the real. And then she
Yes.
says a conundrum.
A conundrum. I love that word.
And then we have another one. Michael says, think with the heart and love with the, he's questioning. Think with the heart and love with the head.
Yes. Yes, they are interchangeable. And when we understand that all the 7 rays really emanate from an upper triad, and the upper triad, of course, from the one absolute, that upper triad, that third aspect of the mind of God, is huge. It's where all the hierarchical prototypes are ruminated on and cyclically impressed through the ashrams, down through all the advanced disciples, and step down into humanity. The mind of God is the mind at large is huge, and that's why in your inquiry you have to realize that when you're talking about the mind, what level are you referring to? In fact, if you look at our whole entire system, if you look at the 9 initiations that take place on the cosmic physical plane, and you finally, at the 6th initiation, make a decision, if it's a number of cosmic paths, you leave this solar system entirely, and yet and leave the cosmic physical plane. But the cosmic physical plane is matter. It's the matter of some great being. It's the body of some supernal state of consciousness of which we practically know nothing. It's like our body. So you can be sure the active intelligent aspect is always becoming refined at each initiation. And when you study the initiations, particularly the last 3, the last 4 or 5, you see that the 3rd ray comes into manifestation very potently, but in a new and more dynamic way, usually through some great service project an initiate of that level has to inaugurate. Okay, good. Any additional other comments or questions?
Yes, Walter says, in music, this is a quote, in music, one must think with the heart and feel with the brain. And the quote is George Snell.
Yes, that's excellent. In occultism, we're given these massive hierarchies and these endless principles and laws to understand. And this is good, and this is according to law, and this is how one trains the lower mind and gains stability of the emotional body by transmutating sacral energy to the throat, 1st initiation, 2nd initiation, solar plexus to the heart, and 3rd initiation, the sacral to the throat, and then the throat to the upper head centers, the ajna, the heart center within the head, and then of course the 1,000-petal lotus itself. Okay, any other comments?
No, that's it for right this minute.
Okay, one of the things that we stressed, and if anybody raises their hand, BL, subsequently, it's fine. I can, even though it may not appear to be the case, I can stop in mid-flight.
Okay.
In many of the posts that we had on the Facebook group page, there was a lot of references to what DK calls the new Aquarian psychic development or sensitivity. And this is very important because the Tibetan says that there is a whole field of research and development that he didn't go into because he mainly wanted to bring his students, and this is an oversimplification, but it's nevertheless true. He wanted to bring the majority of his students from the astral plane up to the mental, and that he would not go into any type of teaching extensively about this new psychic Aquarian development. Well, that was 75 years ago, or 85, or even longer. And I think a lot of students have really become advanced disciples, and they have undergone some of the threshold initiations and are actually preparing for the third initiation, if not going through that initiation. And that when that advanced place is reached, one now looks at psychic development entirely differently. It's looked upon as an additional way to serve. The ability to do an esoteric astrological chart, as an example, and this is true of healing, meditation, assignments, and techniques, the practitioner must assess the level that a person is on. And some of that will be revealed in the chart, the esoteric chart, for you esoteric astrologers. But some of it will be revealed by your intuitive and psychic sensitivity of oracally where that person is at. In fact, so important was this work, and this was the main thrust of my presentation last year at the USR conference. DK actually created an unknown group that's only mentioned several times in his Dina books, where he was actually training these disciples in psychic development. And when I first read that, I took a double take, because I said, I've read these Dina books several times, and for some reason, I had conveniently left that out and just didn't really address it. And when DK talks about this development of this psychic group, he tells one of the students, one of his disciples that was chosen, that the reason why he was given all this 1357 line of masculine energy in this lifetime was because in his previous lifetime, he had developed this psychic sensitivity to a very high level, but he really didn't have full control over it. And so the soul, with its infinite wisdom, created his lower vehicles and his personality rays to reflect that, and he was given this 1357. And so the Tibetan goes on further to say, now that you have assimilated and made much progress along this 1357, the masculine rays, we can swing back and develop that past psychic sensitivity that was probably developed in Atlantean times, but now has to be developed with these new Aquarian energies pouring in. I cannot tell you how impressed and literally shocked I was to hear how perfect that really was to me. And when I look at all of the Dina teachings in those two books, the Discipleship in the New Age teachings, I realized that that was one of the greater goals of the Tibetans' work. If he found somebody that was 1357 developed, he gave them meditations and techniques, and he gave them advice and counsel to bring in the 246 to balance that. And always said the occultist must balance out with the mystical development. And then in contradistinction, he would say just the opposite to the mystic. You have built in all these beautiful feminine rays. You're loving, you're psychically sensitive. You do great in magnetic group work, but you need to build in more of the masculine, the 1357. So he was always alternating his techniques and his wise counsel to help each person develop a good balance of both lines or ray energies. Would anybody like to make any comments on that before we go to the next?
Yes, we have a hand and a comment, and I would like to add a comment here.
Yes, go ahead,
I,
DL.
I think it may be in the Raisin Initiations where he talks about it, but you may be right. It may be just in the Dyna books where he explains it. But he does a good job in one point of explaining that yes, you have to develop the mystic first because you need to develop the love aspect before you become the occultist. But then you have to balance the two of them. And that is the white occultist. If you develop the occultism without having a firm grounding in the mystic first, then you can be susceptible to the black path. And but like I said, I don't have the where it was he said that, but there's a really eloquent passage where he describes that process going on.
Excellent.
Okay, and Joe, she wants to know if she can have a citation of where to find the talk that you gave, the one that you just mentioned.
I'm not sure if it's been transferred from they record everything at the Moya University presentations, but it often takes a while to filter down into something tangible that they put at their Makara site.
They're doing a lot of that right now. They're transferring a lot of the conference material. Mars Sorrell is working on it. And they're uploading it to the Moira Federation YouTube channel.
Excellent.
So that's where it's going to end up if it's not already there.
Excellent.
Okay, and then Heidi's got her hand up and she should have her mic open, so. Heidi, can you go ahead? Up. You were just muted.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So the only thing that I would comment on, and I have to comment actually from my own experience of what you're talking about.
Yes, that's what we want.
And when a mystic develops enough, there is sufficient spaciousness. It's like the space opens up, the internal space opens up. And what I understand that you just gave talk about was that there comes a time when there is actually when you know yourself as one with every energy form that you come in contact with. And when that occurs, then there is the ability to actually, there's a transforming that can happen that happens internally
Yes.
in the system rather than externally, so that it doesn't go through the lower aspect of the being that's working with the energy. And it is quite a beautiful process. Yes. And the reason why you have to have the other is because there's tremendous power in that process. And if the power of the system was misused is when it can cause harm.
Absolutely.
Harm. So that's, I just needed to make that statement through my own process of understanding and also just through my life process.
Excellent. Thank you. That's so true.
And
anyone else?
No, I was just looking. That's it.
Okay. I'd like to take a pause here and do a little alignment and meditation. And I just want to point out that this image that you see on the screen and we're going to enlarge it when we do the meditation, was shared by Anna. Thank you so much. And it represents one of the auric fields, or one of the atoms that each person has as a vehicle. And HPB and DK are continuously affirming the importance of understanding the inner being, the inner person, as being something that's spherical. And that we basically, for each ray or each body that we have a semi-permeable membrane that nests one within the other, so that what you're looking at, we actually have 7 of these. And I love the word nest because it's a word used in contemporary physics when you study how things operate on a subatomic and atomic level. You realize that these different elements and these different energies and magnetic forces, they occupy very distinct places of like energy bands or clouds, but at the same time, they are interconnected with all the other energy bands on these atomic and subatomic levels. So what we see science discovering daily and refining and penetrating into is exactly what DK said years and years ago in several of his books about scientists penetrating into the higher subplanes of the etheric, that they would begin to reveal these mysteries. So as we watch this, I want you to imagine that this is a representation of yourself, of any one particular vehicle. If you want like a little mini healing or alignment, this is really, the sphere is really the Antakarana bridge that we've been taught to research and study so extensively through all of the different books. But it's explained a little differently. But ultimately, the Antakarana bridge is a series of connecting vortices that are part of spheres, or what DK calls in cosmic fire, wheels within wheels. So as we do this meditation, I want you to link up. It's a short one, it's only a couple minutes long, and really sort of try to synchronize your breathing in your intention, your will, and really be open to how powerful a symbol this is.
I don't see anything, Duane. Your PowerPoint's in the way. It's covering the screen.
Okay, the PowerPoint, well, let's minimize the PowerPoint and try it one more time. Okay, is it happening now? Do you see it, Rose?
It might be my system. I don't know. VO, can you see
No,
it?
I can't see it either. The PowerPoint is still there.
Okay, small technical glitch. So I don't see any PowerPoint. I've reduced my PowerPoint and I don't see it. And when I click on the animation, it opens and it plays perfectly.
Okay, so we're not seeing. Okay, what you need to do is hit end share, and then
Where do
make
I
sure you go
find that?
back to the. Yeah, stop the share screen. And then
I don't see anything that allows me
at
to command.
the bottom of your screen, there should be a little taskbar button should come up, and it should say like share or pause share or stop share, or it might be at the top. I think it's at the top of your screen. Just
Okay.
move your mouse to the top of your screen and a pop down command. I can't see what you see, but I'm just going from memory. But there'll be something on there that will say stop sharing.
I hit stop share. Okay, I hit stop share.
Okay, there we are. That's good. So now go back again and hit share screen and then share computer audio like you did originally when you started the webinar.
Okay, can you see the sphere?
The thing we see is a sphere, but it's in PowerPoint.
Okay.
So your PowerPoint is still up.
Okay, so I minimize that. Okay, and then I go right into the folder.
Okay, it has not minimized. It just got bigger.
Well, it's off my screen entirely. I have no idea.
I think when you hit share, did you hit share desktop?
Let's try this. Okay.
Now, when you hit share, you've got to make sure that it's going to ask you, it's going to give you a whole bunch of things to select to share. Make sure you select desktop. It should be the top left corner one. It will say screen.
Okay, I clicked on that, yes.
Okay, there we are, there we are. Yeah, I think you had something else selected. I think you had just your PowerPoint selected. Okay, now we see your desktop.
Okay, so let's see if we can bring up this meditation once again. And tell me, Rose, if we're connected when it starts.
Yeah, I see it now. Yeah, it's good.
Bargo devasya limai Yuyona prachodaya Umurvasva tatsavitu vareniyam 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 Bargo devasya limai Yuyona prachodaya Umurvasva Tatsavitravareniyam Bhargore Vasyani Yona Prachodaya Om Bhurvuvah Svaha 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 Tatsavitravareniyam Bhargore Vasyani Yona.
Okay, great. You finally got it right. Are there any comments?
Yes,
that
we have
anybody would like
a
to
hand.
share?
We have a hand up. Let me see if I can mute if I can unmute Francis. Okay, Francis, can you unmute your microphone now?
I should be unmuted.
Yes.
Yes, you're good.
Okay.
Excellent.
No, just a quick comment how much I enjoy that. It's a daily ritual. In the Vedic tradition, the Gayatri is known as the mother of all mantras.
Excellent. Any additional questions or sharing?
Yes. Let me find them. Diana says the Antakarana is the Vimala, the vehicle or monad, not the bridge of the very childish human concept.
So true.
And Roz said each round felt like a universe unfolding itself.
Beautiful. Okay, any other additional comments?
Not right this minute.
Okay, well, if anybody raises their hand, just let me know. It is said that in the beginning, there was the word, or if you want to go to an even higher level, there was a sound, and that some great being breathed out, and all these different levels of manifestation came into being. And when you watch this, and if you see the outbreath as this cascading of these different bands and these little flashes of light that go in a circular motion, that would be like the creation of a new Manvantari. And then once it's gone through its complete cycle, which can be perhaps billions of years, the great being, having sent out these redemptive waves of light and sound and color and vibration and electricity, breathes in, and then we have a period of obscuration, or what is called pralaya. And this happens macrocosmically over huge cycles of time. But within that greater cycle are lesser cycles. In fact, through the law of correspondence, the macrocosm that we've just outlined is reflected perfectly through the microcosm. And it really comes right down to our own vehicles and our own breathing. Breathing in, circulating what nutriments we get, what oxygen we get, circulating it through our system, and then breathing it out. And it's all electrical and magnetic. And this symbol in its animated form is really a good fusion of the mystical and the occult, because the mystical is the singing, which is sort of Eastern, and the image is more Western. It's actually more scientific. And when you bring the two together, I find it's a very powerful, evocative symbol. If you can imagine electricity traveling down these striated bands, are there any questions, DL, at this point?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Dana Marie asked if you can email them this.
Of course.
And of course, you're going to give us the PowerPoint presentation with the links embedded in it,
Yes,
right? Right. Okay.
exactly.
So we'll make it available with the recording, and you'll get the link for that when I announce that it's been posted on Makara.
Excellent. DK says that you cannot approach hierarchy or the soul until the mental vehicle becomes striated. Now, we think of striation as parallel lines. And in the study of electricity, electrons travel fastest with the least expenditure of energy and the least resistance when these little electronic packets of energy, these little discrete packets of force, travel in parallel lines. And if you were to look at the average auric field or spherical identity of any person that, let's say, hadn't coordinated their three lower instruments or vehicles, you would see a lot of sort of pandemonium. This type of striation doesn't exist. It's sort of these massive movements of colored light shooting from this place to that place on an astral or etheric level, and on a mental level, sort of half-formed thought forms interacting with these lower astral planes. If any of you have ever seen some of Charles Ledbetter's books on the inner auric field, it's really a good description. And because all these vehicles are electrical in nature, the master or the soul, which is the greatest potency and electrical and magnetic field, they cannot extend their bridge of light or sound or geometry, because it's really multiple things, until we have done the preparatory work of striating these lower fields so that the energies are running uniform. In other words, if I intermittently stopped this little animation that I shared with you, that would be very similar to how many people's auric fields operate. They're sort of moving in the correct way, then they stop, they shudder, then there's breakdowns. And as I've demonstrated many times in these presentations, these striated bands are all interlaced with triangles. And these rotating bands and their subsequent triangles are actually what repel negative forces from entering into the different auric fields. And it's also in the other, looking at the other side of it, how an advanced disciple or initiate takes the energy coming from even deeper levels and processing it in their personality vehicles and then sending it out through this grid. This grid is not just some cold geometric form, it is living light. It is striations and different geometric forms that express the level that this particular life is at, whether it's an atom or a disciple or a planetary logos. They all conform to some degree to this sort of general symbolic language. And this is why we study symbols, because it, particularly hierarchical symbols, because it introduces us, we all work with symbols. We are a symbol. Every time you pick up a book and read a word, that's a symbol. But sometimes charts and tabulations, at least the second-rate types, can be more user-friendly. They can be more potent because you have to invoke the imagination in new and creative ways. And that's not to say reading text can't be translated into identical images, but most people that I know don't really have that higher level of skill at this point. So these images are like intermediaries. And as DK has pointed out, it's only by taking these symbols and bringing them to the high mental plane that they do their real work of white magic and affect causal levels. Just looking at it can affect your threefold vehicles, but when you add to that, drawing it up to the high mental plane, you really, really create a powerful bridge. Any comments?
No, not yet.
Okay, well, believe it or not, we're actually going to touch a little bit on astrology. And we discussed quite a bit in other presentations how in the advanced work in astrology, there are these techniques of the what DK called the 12 zodiacal meditations, and you purify your personality, you integrate your personality with your soul. But once you're integrating into your soul, you have additional techniques where if you understand your rising sign, which is the purpose sort of where your soul is, you're going to be open to using this advanced technique of monadic influence, where you take the opposite of the sun side and begin to understand that that's where the monad's influence may be coming into your soul alignment and down through your three lower personality vehicles, at least up to the third and maybe into the third, fourth, and fifth till the causal body's totally destroyed. And then the rising sign or the soul itself is just either goes back to the heart of the sun or where it was borrowed from, or some part of it is disintegrated. DK actually says several things. So this idea of the 12 zodiacal signs being fused into the 6 is a very, very powerful symbol, because that is the intermediary zone before the 6. The fused 6 move into the 1, pure being, pure abstraction, the Laya point, and the place that all discipleships are trained to eventually recognize. Love, of course, being the great mediator to do this work. So I would like to take the few remaining minutes we have and show how the Agni Yoga teachings parallel in many ways so perfectly the Tibetan's teachings. And the Tibetan, as you all know, speaks very highly of the Rorich's contribution, and even states that the Agni Yoga that they presented to the world and that what was shared really was sort of more from a first ray point of view, but very, very important teachings. And I wanted to just quickly run over a couple of quotes. BL, would you like to read this first one to us?
There are two kinds of logic. The logic of external reasoning, which one attempts to learn from textbooks, and that of mental synthesis, by which one collects and links the sparks of spatial thought. These sparks may seem to be a happy accident, even though this accident may have been ripening in space for an entire century. The broadened consciousness provides the best possibility of grasping the nodes of spatial thought. As rings of spirals show to the observer the outer turns and conceal the inner turns, so mental logic proceeds according to the limits of the outer turns, while the inner turns are still merged in the streams of collective thought in space. Hence, we take such care about the broadening of the consciousness in order that union with spatial thought may be approached.
These quotes by Agni Yoga are so powerful, they really deserve more time than we have to sort of expand on them and really understand them fully. When you understand that all the principles that the ageless wisdom speak of, all the hidden lives, are spherical, you begin to understand what he means when he says, as the rings of the spiral show to the observer the outer turns, but they conceal the inner turns. When you look at the mental sphere or the mental atom, it has 7 levels, and the 3 higher turns are evolutionary in their makeup, and the 3 lower turns are involutionary. So what he's saying here is exactly what we just reviewed pretty extensively about the lower and higher mind and how important to understand these 2 different types of logic. Let's go into an actual visual image or technique that Master M gives in these teachings. Rose, would you like to read this one?
No, I cannot.
Okay. Would we like to have a volunteer? Michael, would you like to read it? Are you still with us?
Can you unmute yourself, Michael?
Okay. So, the combination of 2 dodecahedrons is useful for promoting the rhythm of fire. Equally simple should be the idea of the spiral nature of all that exists and of creative explosions. Thus, the breath of the cosmos will be realized as an ascending spiral. We all rejoice if you are applying the rhythms indicated to you. Of course, the rhythms vary with each individual, and the current condition of one's organism determines the results. One should accept the transmissions from space into the open chalice. This is the guarantee of synthesis. Likewise, one must follow one's inner rhythm, because the developed consciousness cannot be without rhythm. The combination of 2 dodecahedrons is useful promoting the rhythm of fire. When enough energy has been accumulated, I shall demonstrate it, because this fleeting rhythm is necessary for the approaching to Agni Yoga.
Very, very powerful statement. DK says in his different works that the most powerful teachings of Raja Yoga are given in the old commentary. And all of you who have studied the works of DK know that the old commentary, like the stanzas of Duane, are very cryptic. They're partially poetic and prosy and invoke the intuition, but they're also very enigmatic. And anybody who can read them and claim that they understand exactly what the master is saying simply by a quick read has got my admiration, or maybe they need to go back and reread it a few more times. This idea of the spiral nature of all that exists and of creative explosions, that reminds me of H.P. Blavatsky, who said Fohat drills holes in space when talking about the stanzas of Duane, and how Fohat and the seven messengers descended down through creating the fiery whirlwind. All these really cryptic statements that really can't fully be understood by the lower mind, but only by the higher mind, and in my opinion, the intuition. So what I've done is to help us understand this. As a graphic artist, I've put together what two dodecahedrons might look like in the upper part of this image. The one on the right is the polar opposite of the one on the left. In other words, in Adobe Photoshop, I reversed the colors so that we would have polar opposites. And then on the third image at the bottom, where it says a combination of two dodecahedrons, they're both superimposed over each other. So here is a direct suggestion by one of the masters to take one of the Platonic solids, the dodecahedron, and use it in meditation. That will help in developing this alignment with fiery spatial connection. Now, is Walter with us? Still Walter Poulin?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, Walter, I want to thank you so much for sending this particular image, and we're going to see it now in motion. And what it does is it takes two dodecahedrons and it sort of morphs one over the other, alternately, back and forth. And what it does is it begins to give the dodecahedron more of an animated feel. That this dodecahedron that the master is talking about can be potentially an explosion of energy or some spiral entity that's in motion. And we'll get into at some point how spirals and the geometric Platonic solids have a common place of meeting when the outer third ray facets and faces its different vehicles and bodies. These fiery nebulae, sort of akashic energies, need to have some type of form, but they're not form as we understand it. So let's sort of get into a little meditative place and see if I can get this to come up onto the screen and see if we have any of the same difficulties I had before. Okay, Rose, are you there? Or BL, you can tell me if we're actually seeing this?
Yes.
Excellent. When you look at this dodecahedron, you can see how something that appears rigid or tangible can actually be very organic. And the higher you go in the scale of energies and forces, DK claims the more simplified they become. They become processes of energy and force in movement rather than things. And this is a very powerful symbol because it has the colors of ray 1 and 7. Ray 1, red, ray 7, violet. And that we know is the highest and the lowest meeting. Any comments on this?
Yes, we've got, Walter wants to say something, but we also have one comment here really quick.
Okay, good.
Diana says, I had the imperative need to rotate one to the right and the other to the left.
Excellent. And that would be occultly correct because, to quote DK, reality is two forces moving in opposite directions at the same time, will and the material plane or the material energies. You see that in the reverse wheel of the chart going around the astrological chart clockwise. Then when you become an initiate of a certain standing, you begin to go counterclockwise. But ultimately, you go both directions at the same time, with the greater life, of course, dominating.
And then Walter has his hand up, and then Michael. So Walter, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, yes. For this animation, it's indeed a lot like breathing in and out or a heartbeat, but I also found it like the antachrona, where it's because both halves are reaching for each other at the same time. It's like both the spirit and matter halves, or the invocation and evocation, taking place. And of course, it's also showing that this is more energy as opposed to form, because they're interpenetrating. It's not just like crystallized form where they're colliding, but they're truly interpenetrating.
Yes. Excellent. And thank you so much for sharing that, Walter, because I've shared it literally with hundreds of people since you shared it with me. And it just shows you how a small gift can really modify and expand itself through these different spiritual channels and connections that we have. Michael?
Yes, as I observed this symbol, what it suggested to me was the entity of space, in breathing and out breathing, in breathing and out breathing.
Excellent. This is probably one of the most powerful quotes from Cosmic Fire to me as an artist and as an aspiring astrologer. And the idea of, let me read it quickly. When, therefore, the esoteric side of astrology and of mystical geometry has been studied, an alliance has been made between these two sciences, a flood of light will be thrown upon this matter of the intelligent principle. At the present time, it is not possible to do more than point out the direction of the path which must be trodden before this abstruse matter can be made clear, and to indicate certain lines of investigation which might, if strenuously and scientifically followed, yield to the student a rich reward of knowledge. Until the intuition is better developed in the average man, the very principle of man itself forms a barrier to its due understanding. Mystical geometry and esoteric astrology. I imagine if every time an astrologer does a chart, they're working with some type of mystical geometry. And this is why I have been so supportive, Walter, with your work with these 3D charts, because I think it's in the early stages bringing out an additional quality that I have always felt astrology has lacked. Now, maybe it's just my limitation, but to be able to see somebody's charts in 3D rotating in front of you spherically is very, very powerful. And as I've said, Walter, on many occasions, I would like to be supportive and help you develop that in any way that I can, not so much from an astrological point of view, but from an artistic and graphic point of view. This is very paradoxical, because DK is saying on one sentence, he's saying, if strenuously and scientifically followed, it will yield to the student a rich reward of knowledge. But then he says in the next sentence, until the very intuition is developed, better developed in the average man, the very principle of madness itself forms a barrier to its due understanding. In other words, you can interpret this on multiple levels, but the level that I see this is you will never understand the importance of Manus until you step out of Manus into the more abstract levels and the intuition and see how important it is, but only as an adjunct, only as a servant to the abstract and higher mind, the Buddhic, and the Atmic levels, because they are simply reflections. Very, very powerful. Any additional comments on this? Because it's really an introduction into some geometry we're going to launch into.
I just wanted to add that to me, this is describing the music of the spheres. You know, I have that issue. I have that concrete mind that gets in my way, my Ray 5 mind, and it helps me see the geometry when I look at a chart. But I can't get beyond that because I don't have that intuitive link that takes me there. But I know that it's all about the harmony that's happening between the signs, between the aspects, between the planets, between the constellations out there. So when I first heard that term, the music of the spheres, even though my concrete mind gets in my way, I knew intuitively what they were talking about, that it was part and parcel of that etheric web and the interaction of all of it together.
I'm going to ask you, BL, for permission to extend our time with this just a little longer than the hour and a half, because I'm just getting into some concluding images and animations that I can quickly go right through.
Sure, sure.
Thank you. Now, here we see a series of dodecahedrons nesting one within the other. And graphic images of this quality allow us to see the transparency of what energy and force might look like were we clairvoyant, or even here, clairaudient. And we're not specifically trying to train psychics here, but those qualities will naturally emerge as time goes by. Let's look at this. Now, this is also a dodecahedron, but what is the difference between this and all the previous ones we've shared? The pentagon, there's 12 pentagons that make up a dodecahedron. When you take the edges or the triangles of those 5 corners and you draw them together to a point, you get a 12-pointed star. So this is what you are looking at here, is a 12-pointed dodecahedron star. And isn't it magnificent? Doesn't it just speak on such deep levels? Because Stars are so important. The diamond is a star. Upper and lower triangles. All the polyhedra and platonic solids are all based on triangles. The very basis of astrology is triangles. And when we get into studying the three different levels, the three different types of astrological triangles, the mutable, fixed, and cardinal, it's really good to bring that into focus. So let's continue. Now, this is interesting, and I think when you said, Michael, about the universe, when you looked at the dodecahedron, could you repeat that again? Because I found this sort of paralleled what you said on a very scientific and exoteric level.
Yes, what I said was the symbol came across to me as the entity of space through the law of cyclic, of periodicity.
Yes.
In breathing, out breathing, in breathing, out breathing. Just it's a pulsation.
Excellent. Is the universe shaped as a dodecahedron? Some recent research is suggesting that the universe is the shape of a dodecahedron. Research is based upon data collected by an American satellite called the Wilkinson Microwave Anisotropy Probe. This satellite collects data relating to microwave radiation, energy whose source is supposed to be the Big Bang. The conclusion of the data alluding to the universe as being shaped as a dodecahedron. Well, we can talk about, well, is there really a Big Bang and all kinds of other things, but we're going to confine it just to this little quote. The wavelength of this radiation is remarkably pure, but like a musical note, it has harmonics associated with it. These harmonics, like those of a note, reflect the shape of the object in which the waves were generated. In the case of the note, that object is a musical instrument. In the case of the microwave background, that object is the universe itself. I found that very powerful because I've read quite a bit on this, and this is just one quote out of a number of different publications that have said similar things, that there is geometry to our universe, that even gravity itself distributes itself unequally, that there are what are called gravity wells. And when you study the Thunderbolts project and what they're saying about how all these planetary and solar and these constellations and star systems are all connected by these plasma streams, that although you can't perceive them by the naked eye, just like esotericism has said for probably thousands of years, they're all on this net of Indra, these pearls of light that radiate and create a network or grid that makes one super system. And they used to think if a supernova went radiatory, say 1 million light years away, that had no effect on us. Now, there are physicists and cosmologists in the mainstream that are starting to say, wait a minute now, we notice that when this happened way out here, that it had an effect on our sun. Well, we know there's 12 constellations out there, or star systems that are affecting us. There's 3 primary ones, and this supports it in a scientific way that to me is just mind-blowing. Okay, any additional comments?
Yes, actually, we do have.
Okay,
Let me
good.
see. Don't make me laugh, Lisa. She says the guy's last name is Luminate. Gotta
Oh,
love it.
very good. Somebody's paying attention. Excellent.
And Francis has a question. There
Just,
you go.
just a comment that it's been said, you were speaking of triangles, that the universe is a series of ascending and descending triangles.
Yes,
To be analogous to the dance of Shiva Shakti.
absolutely. And when you look at that rotating torus sphere that we showed the first animation, you can see the North Pole would be conceived as the Shiva, where energy pours in, and Shakti would be the base of the spine, where energy pours out, only to circulate through this triangulation spherical grid back to the source again, but with the additional experience of having gone through this, remembering that we're really talking about 7 spheres, each one nesting one within the other and not just one. Haven't we heard DK say something similar in his books, that a small group of people united can truly master cosmic events and can literally change the course of history if enough of advanced workers have built in the right equipment and can invoke the will and some of these higher levels. Okay, on a very minor level, this is actually a crystal that's artificially created through heat. It's called a dodecahedral quasi-crystal, and it's actually grown. And they have a complex way of growing it, but basically, one of the things that go into it is magnetism and electricity. And they say here it has a localized magnetic moment. And I love that phrase. Next time I get a blast from the beyond, I'm going to say, oh, I'm having a magnetic moment. Can you please excuse me? But even etherically, on the lowest levels, you see the dodecahedron repeating itself on the smallest scale. This idea of the law of correspondence and the idea of this dodecahedron being a reflection of the universe and these great principles, it's also a reflection of the heart center because it has 12 faces. And we know 12 is critical on many, many, many levels of development around the heart. Okay, so and this is on this is on a subatomic level where some scientist was talking about silicone dodecahedron fullerenes in molecular electronics, that the very lowest level of atomic and subatomic levels, this is some of the geometry they're coming up with. That there is order, in spite of all the apparent chaos, there is order in the universe. And we won't go into this, but this will be included. This is sort of a distillation of a number of authorities from the theosophical tradition that give numbers and give the Platonic solid. And one last one before we do an animation by Master M. Truth is veiled in symbols, but the mind cannot comprehend their relevance to life, and their meaning must be revealed by everyday events. People need familiar images, and by these images is the spirit uplifted to its true dwelling. So what I've done in the next animation that we're going to see is a dodecahedron in motion, excuse me. But as it morphs and gyrates through these different animated segments, it's all a dodecahedron, but at one moment it looks like a cauliflower, then broccoli, or a flower, or something you'd see in nature. And I thought this might be a good parallel and a good little mini meditation because it shows the diversity of the dodecahedron and that it's in motion all the time. as DK says, about triangles. So let's see if we can get this one to come up for us. Ella, we get visual image?
Yes.
Thank you. Excellent. And now we're going to go into the last animation and we are done. This one is, to me, the most powerful because it shows the dodecahedron interfacing with a lot of the Platonic solids, but it's done at a very high rapid rate of speed, and it gives you a good idea of sacred geometry and how they all fit together. Excellent. But that doesn't make your sneakers smoke nothing wrong.
You have a comment from Diana. She says,
Okay.
just to share that for healing, I use 1 dodecahedron in the 4th center and 2 in each hand, secondary centers of the heart,
Awesome.
for circulatory or heart problems.
That's wonderful.
And then Rose Witha said, brilliant, thank you.
And feel free later to send us any comments over Facebook or any additional suggestions. I really appreciate, once again, you all taking your valuable time to be a part of this really telepathic work, because when you get a whole group of people focusing on one symbol, it builds resonance. And that's what bridge building is creating resonance. Okay, if there's not any last statements, we will see you next time.
No, that seems to be it. So thank you very much, Duane. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We send our love and look forward to sharing with you in the future.
Margaret has her hand up. Let's see if we can. Okay. Margaret, can you unmute yourself?
Does that work?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to say thank you. It was great.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming.
Loved it.
and sharing.
As we say in Hawaii, mahalo.
Mahalo. I can't speak good English. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
And Ross says thank you.
Thank you, Rose and BL. And we shall meet again.